Good morning, Sac City. Welcome into another episode of the Sac City Podcast. I am your host, the one and only Vinny Milani, joined, as always, by my best friend in the whole entire world. He is Aaron, the Mukesiah Mukes. It is a beautiful September 14th morning here in the city. We are about to kick off really another episode of the Fantasy Drive presented by the Sac City Podcast, where we give you guys all the fantasy information you need to win those league championships. Week 1 is in the books. We are breaking down what transpired in fantasy in week 1 and taking a look ahead into week 2 and the waiver wire ads you should have added. And if you didn't, go out and get them. If you didn't, we have Aaron's top 5 waiver wire additions this week. Aaron, how goes it? You are on mute.
Bad start already. No, I'm good. Won in a lot of my leagues, most of my leagues, which is, no surprise there, guys. We already know that was going to happen. So I'm good. I'm really feeling really good about week 2. Some of my teams are already falling apart though with injuries and some busts that we're going to talk about, I'm sure, or some concerning players, which are we going to overreact? Are we not? Week 1, everybody tends to go a little crazy. So we'll get into that, but yeah, I'm excited.
So what are you doing in that situation? Let's take the fans through what's going through your mind right now. Obviously, you just said some of your teams are actually falling apart right now, and that may be because of maybe injury or some underperforming players in week 1. What's your thought process and what's going through your mind right now as you try and handle these decisions?
Well, I'm big on status quo. I tend to stay like this pretty much throughout the entire year. I try not to overreact to 1 week. I try not to overreact to injuries unless it's obviously something that's long-term. When you start talking about losing a player for the season, you obviously got to shift. But you drafted this team 2 weeks ago, and you can't be that sold or foregone on what you thought before week 1 as you are after week 1. So there's not that much that could have happened to really shift what you think a player is going to do, at least in my opinion. Maybe a few players out there that we might rethink some strategies about, but most of those players are players that the Mukesiah and Vinny, and we've already told you that we had concern about those players going into week 1. So it shouldn't really come as too much of a surprise. So I don't shift too much. I try to stay status quo, try to find value on the waiver wire early in the season. I'm not a big I used to be a guy that goes out and spends all his fab budget on week 1. There's a lot of league winners in week 1. Usually the best players that come from the waiver wire usually come from the first couple of weeks of the season. A lot of people think you get league winners late, but that's actually not true. Usually the guy that goes out for the season that you pick up in week 2, his backup, that's usually the guy that has the most value off the waiver wire for the year. So I used to be that way, but now I'm a little bit more patient on players, and I try to find value and winning. I want winning late in the season, not necessarily week 2, week 3, week 4. So I feel like strong enough, getting to the playoffs, you should be strong enough, and then find those league winners for those last 4 weeks is much more important than the league winner that's in week 2.
I think the biggest thing that you just said was just the fact that you have to stay here. Just the entire season. You cannot fluctuate with what happened in a certain week. You have to stay like water. You have to stay fluid. You have to stay even
be water, my friend. Be water.
What's that from? I don't get the reference.
That's Bruce Lee, man.
Oh, okay. I didn't get the reference. I'm sorry. I'm terrible. Well, we're going to get into those waiver wire additions in a little bit to help you guys win the next week and hopefully win in the future. But before we get into that, I just want to remind everyone to please follow us on all of our social media platforms at the Sac City Pod on Facebook, Twitter, Instagram, YouTube, and the Tickety Talk. We've got the best social media out in the world. And follow it now. There it is. And follow it now at Sac City Pod. Aaron, do you want to do an ad read, or would you like to head into a commercial break before we get into our
okay? Let AJ represent.
This season preview is brought to you by Manscaped's brand new Ultra Premium 2-in-1 shampoo and conditioner. This luxurious lather cleanses and nourishes in just one step. Using coconut water, green tea, and aloe, this non-greasy daily formula is naturally hydrating and rich in antioxidants to revitalize the look and feel of your hair. So head on over to manscaped.com and use the promo code SACCITY for 20% off and free worldwide shipping. The new Ultra Premium 2-in-1 shampoo and conditioner from Manscaped. Take care of hair everywhere.
Everywhere. Let's get into our week 1 reactions here. It was a fun fantasy week in terms of the production. I was 4-3 this week in terms of all my fantasy leagues, 4-3. So when you start off with a winning record in most of your leagues, that's good, especially in the sack league where I started 0-4 last year, and I was able to get a big win this week over a team that actually wasn't drafted. It was auto drafted by Dylan. I was able to get the win though.
You would have won either way.
I did. I lost to him once last year, so I needed to get that. I needed to get the monkey off my back this year, get the dub. But it was a good week for fantasy for me. Aaron, what were your reactions as a whole to the fantasy performances that we saw in week 1?
Yeah, most of my reactions aren't, again, excuse me, really out of the ordinary. It's the lack of running back depth, which I believe we have lamented a number of times. I keep telling people this, like, you have to draft your running backs or you're not going to have any. If you look at the running back numbers from week 1, I believe there weren't a whole lot. There was not a whole lot there from the running back position outside of the top, 10, 12 guys. It takes a huge, a pretty big drop off. You got guys in there that weren't drafted, and like Jamal Williams had bigger days. Excuse me. I'm still a little sick, by the way.
You good? You good?
Yeah, but for the most part, you start getting into the range of those 10 to 15 pointers. No real studs at the top of the board there after you get some of those big guys out of the way. So running backs were big. We had 3 running backs that I thought really shit the bed. It was Ezekiel Elliott, obviously with Dallas, they just didn't use him. Najee Harris did not have a great day. Alvin Kamara did not have a great day, and then Christian McCaffrey was in the middle, but that was because late he got some things going himself. But overall, there was 3 backs that I thought were rated high, but really didn't get the opportunity to get work. So disappointing in some of the usage, but it goes to show you this is a passing league. Wide receivers are a lot easier to find. So make sure you're set at running back.
Yeah. And I think this week, and I get it. Like, you don't want to go into week 1 and willing to risk it. Like, you don't want to risk it on those guys like James Robinson and some of the newer faces in the new places that we talked about. And I think after this week, my reaction to everything is studs will be studs. And I know some, like you just mentioned, like Zeke and those studs won't be studs. But the later round guys, like that you said you couldn't try, like you had to wait and see, like it's it. And I guess I'm more specifically talking about James Robinson because I think that like this week is the proving week. I'm a little concerned though, and now that's kind of what we're going to get into is our reactions and overreactions to certain things. Guys like Devonta Smith and Ezekiel Elliott and everyone. I've seen a lot of people freak out over what to do, especially with a player like Devonta Smith, who I want to talk about beforehand as we kick this off. 0 points in this first week. Now, A.J. Brown, the number 1 wide receiver, probably what it seems to be in Philadelphia. Let's start off with Devonta Smith and the overreaction. Is it an overreaction to say, oh, shit, we have to worry about Devonta Smith?
Yeah, it's definitely overreaction. I think most reactions of week 1 are going to be overreactions, positive or negative. Devonta Smith's going to be fine. And what did you really expect from Devonta Smith this year? That's really what you have to look at. I think we all knew he was kind of going to take a little bit of a backseat to A.J. Brown. I think we all think A.J. Brown's a more talented guy, bigger body, just probably a more fit to be an NFL receiver. So I think we knew he was going to be the wide receiver 2 on his team. He did get 4 targets. It's not like they didn't look at him. He got 4 targets. They just couldn't connect. Jalen Hurts was inaccurate at times. I don't think this is really indicative of what we're going to get from Devonta Smith the whole year. He's not going to get 0 points every game. So this is the 0 that you're going to get from a Devonta Smith. The worst game he's going to have, right? So when you spent a draft pick on Devonta Smith, you don't get to overreact right now. You can't do it. You can't. Overreaction would mean one of 2 things. You either find a trade partner, or which is going to be you're not going to get value, or you drop him. And I'm telling you right now, don't drop him. Like you're definitely overreacting if you're dropping him. So I think you just stay the status quo. You just say, oh, well, you know what? He sucked. But I think I think the 0 is what's bothering people. But would it have been better if it was 2 catches for 5 yards and it was 2.5? Like, you know what I mean? Like, I don't know what would have made it better that you wouldn't have overreacted if it was still a bad game. And there's been a lot of players that had bad games this week. Are you thinking the same thing about Allen Robinson? Are you thinking the same thing about Adam Thielen? Are you thinking the same thing about those players that did nothing, but they scored? It wasn't a goose egg. Like, I don't get that thought process. So it's just one of those things. He had a bad game. He missed on all 4 of his targets. If he catches 3 of those for 40 yards, we're not having this conversation today.
Yeah, that's fair. That's fair. What player do you think has the biggest overreaction coming from week 1 that people are losing their minds over, but everything is actually okay?
Oh, you know, a lot of people invested heavily in Mike Williams, and I think his overreaction or his reaction is going to be one that's like, we know this is a Mike Williams thing. This can happen, but do we care? Do we care? And I think a lot of people had Mike Williams being in the top 12 again. I think the only thing that saves him is that Keenan Allen is hurt, and people will think, oh, he should get more volume. But I think the overreactions for Mike Williams. I also think the overreactions, honestly, for Cam Akers. I think the Cam Akers one has been the biggest talking point. And I'm sorry, but as much as I'm down on Cam Akers, I am still not overreacting to the fact that he got 0 points. He didn't do anything. He didn't play. Like, that's not going to happen all year. I'm telling you right now, it's not.
I think with Cam Akers, though, like I do think that there is some overreaction with Cam Akers, and a lot of these players, when it comes to the overreaction side, it's more like, to me, like you said with Devonta Smith, you're not dropping him. Sure, you can try and trade him at his lowest value, but you're not going to get the return on what you invested in Cam Akers or like one of those type of players that you drafted and invest. Like, we're still in the point of the fantasy season where you still have that in the back of your mind of where you drafted that player, where you invested in. We're not at the point where week 3, week 4, week 5, where you're like, okay, it's now time to set aside where I invested in them and start focusing on, do I have to move on? Do I have to drop this guy? Do I have to trade this guy? We're still early on enough to where you don't have to think like that. And with a guy like Cam Akers, especially, you're not getting any running back that's going to have the potential of what Cam Akers can do on the waiver wire. Sure, you can put him on your trade block, but again, you might not get what you invested in him. You might not get that return. So I do think there's an overreaction when it comes to like that kind of stuff where like, oh, should I consider dropping Cam Akers? No, you shouldn't be considering that this early. But I do have the concerns. I think it is a real reaction. I think it's a warranted reaction for what Cam Akers brought, because again, I guess maybe it's not even a reaction on my end and maybe not on your end either, but like, because with what we expected from Cam Akers this year, we talked about it last season. We talked about it entering this season. We thought that he came back maybe a little too early, and you've brought up the concern of the injury, of not necessarily re-injuring, but just the concern of something never feeling right again. And there's just something with it, Cam Akers, that is there that I don't think we're going to see him return the value of where you drafted him.
Let me ask you this question. This is a question for all fantasy owners that have Cam Akers. If Darrell Henderson gets hurt, is Cam Akers not considered probably one of the best handcuffs to have in the NFL?
Correct.
Are you rostering Alexander Madison? Are you rostering Tony Pollard? Are you rostering some of the other, the backups of guys that are, if they drop, they're going to be a top back? This is why you can't drop Cam Akers, because Darrell Henderson has an injury history. And no matter what, even if you did to spend a 3rd, 4th, 5th round pick on Cam Akers, you blew it. Yeah, whatever. Cam Akers is arguably the best handcuff in the NFL, which means if Darrell Henderson gets hurt, guess who slides in there? It's not Jake Funk. Kyron Williams is out for the year. Man. Who's it going to be? It's going to be Cam Akers, despite Sean McVay being upset at him, despite him looking slow or maybe not looking the same. Cam Akers is going to get that opportunity. So you have to put things into perspective. And I do disagree with you on one point. The draft is over. And you should not be making decisions based on where you drafted a player at this point. You should be making decisions based on how you see a player going forward. And I think that's the biggest thing. Looking for a player going forward. When you start looking back, oh man, I drafted him in the second round. You start finding yourself adding value to a player that may not be that value, and you can't move them in trades. Holding on to players too long when you should be letting them go. I think you have to look at all of it. I think you have to look at how they're being used, what kind of situation they're in, just every aspect of the player versus just saying, well, I spent the second round pick on him. It can't be over already. I can't not do this. Like, I would have concerns when he's had 2 good weeks, because you're not going to do that. You're going to look at your 14-round pick and you're going to be like, you know what? I want the value now of a 6th-round pick because he's playing like a 6th-round pick. He's getting the volume of a 6th-round pick. And so you can't have it both ways. You got to look at each player for what they are now and going forward. If you start looking back, I'm sorry, I don't even think about where I drafted guys anymore. As a matter of fact, I don't even know where I drafted half these guys anymore because I don't want to get caught up in, I spent a 1st-round pick on this guy. I need 1st-round value. No, you don't. You need value to make your team better. That's it.
Yeah. Well, that I think you do still have to consider where you drafted him this early, because you have to remember what the investment really was in, what the player's ceiling is supposed to be. Because you don't, week 1, like Ezekiel Elliott, where did you draft Ezekiel Elliott?
Probably 3rd round.
So I do think you have to consider, you drafted him in the 3rd round. The investment is that you invested a 3rd-round pick in this guy that, one, you can't just drop a 3rd-round pick right now. Like, not in week 1.
No, but you could trade a 3rd-round pick for somebody that was drafted in the 5th.
Correct. That's fine. If you see the potential in that player that you drafted in the 5th is there, I just think you have to still factor in the potential of these guys and where you drafted
that's what
them.
We're talking about. The potential doesn't, the draft pick doesn't speak to potential.
It does, because I drafted Ezekiel Elliott with the potential of him being that 3rd round, having that 3rd round type player production. That's what
but circumstances are not the same now, Vinny. Circumstances have changed
after 1 week.
Yes. Well, I can tell you, if we're only using Zeke as specific, yes, Dak being gone, offensive line injuries, the circumstances in Dallas have changed. Zeke is no longer a 3rd-round pick. Okay. Circumstances have changed. And the circumstances don't have to necessarily be injury. They could be anything. Cam Akers also was drafted on potential, but his circumstances changed the minute that Sean McVay had questions and the Rams didn't use him. Those circumstances have now changed. If you don't shift, Travis Etienne, the circumstances were high. But when you see James Robinson getting the bulk of the carries coming off an Achilles injury, those circumstances have changed. If you do not change your value, then you are getting stuck in this, I have to have the same value I had before the draft that I have after the draft. And that is not the case. Circumstances change every week. How big are those circumstances, and should they impact on how you trade somebody or drop somebody? That's the question you're asking yourself. And on that same note, James Robinson, who was drafted so low, that's the only reason why you're excited about James Robinson. Because if James Robinson was drafted in the 3rd round right now, I would have concerns about James Robinson. That's the difference, because he only got 11 carries. He was fortunate to get in the end zone twice. If you take touchdown regression and eliminate those 2 touchdowns, he had an average-ass game. And there are going to be players like that. Next week, James Robinson could literally have 8 points, and we could be having a completely different conversation about a guy that returned value in week 1, but may not if we go forward and people acquire him via trade. So those inflated prices as of somebody having a good week 1 or a good week 2, that's what you have to be wary of. So be careful when you're acquiring players that have maybe had a low draft value but have had good week 1s. That's where you're talking about, like, hey, don't go crazy and think now an 8th round pick is a 1st round pick. But you also do have to look at going forward. Darrell Henderson has value now. Yeah. That if I'm a Darrell Henderson owner and I drafted him late as a handcuff, I'm not trading him late as a handcuff. I'm trading him as probably a 5th to 6th round draft pick as a running back. And most people, I would tell you, don't buy it. Fine. If I'm on the other side of it, I'm not buying that Darrell Henderson value, because I've seen too many times 3 weeks, then it's Cam Akers. Yeah. So you have to be careful. That's why I say throw everything away. What is it going forward? Try to project that way, like you're drafting all over again. It's almost that mindset of, if you were drafting today, where would you take Zeke? If you were drafting today, where would you take James Robinson? If you were drafting today, where would you take Darrell Henderson?
So basically, I need to do a mock draft every week. That's what I'm getting at here. That's what I'm getting at here. You sold me when you brought up. You sold me when you brought up the ETN and James Robinson thing, because that's where that you know how I feel about that. Before we get into our waivers, I do just want to play a little game here, and this is a buy or sell game, a week 1 buy or sell fantasy reactions of players who maybe did good, and you're buying that they're going to continue this trend, or players who did bad that you're buying or selling, whether that'll continue. Make sense?
Let's do it.
Fantastic. Michael Thomas. That last week he had the 2 touchdowns, or did he have 2 touchdowns or 1 touchdown? I can't remember.
He had 2.
He had 2. Yeah, 2 touchdowns, 57 yards, 5 receptions in the game against Atlanta. Are you buying or selling that this production will continue for Michael Thomas?
I'm going to buy the production because I think that's what his stat lines are going to look a lot like. So the touchdowns, obviously not going to score 2 touchdowns every week, but I do think he's a threat in the red zone. I do think 5 for 57 is about what he gets. So I'll buy the production, barring injury, obviously, and he's healthy, seems to be healthy. And I usually don't say what if injuries. So, yeah, I'll buy that production. I think he can get back to being a wide receiver too, perhaps if he gets enough touchdowns into that back-end wide receiver 1 category.
Okay. Cordero Patterson in the same game, he had 16 receiving yards, but he had 120 rushing yards. 3 receptions. He was same old Cordero Patterson that we saw last year.
Crazy. This is another guy that he went undrafted in some leagues. Very late draft pick because people didn't think he could do it again. I'm going to tell you, I'm buying that he can continue to do this from a production standpoint. Again, I do have serious concerns about his long-term health, being able to take that many touches over the course of the season again. We saw him wear down towards the end of last year. But from a strict production standpoint, opportunity standpoint, he's going to get the ball because they don't have anybody else. Offensive line, it was a concern for me, but they ran against a really good Saints run defense. I'm buying Cordero Patterson being a top running back. Maybe not top 10. Maybe he finishes top 15, but running back is thin. I'm buying it. If you got Cordero Patterson as a late round, if you did 0 RB, I did 0 running back in a league one time, and I'm not a big fan of 0 running back, but I did, and I drafted Cordero Patterson. I'm feeling real good right now. Let's just say that.
Shout out to the Falcons fans that have been commenting on our YouTube stuff about Cordero Patterson this, Cordero Patterson that. Dameon Pierce in this game, buying or selling that the struggles continue, and what happened with Rex Burkhead. Dameon Pierce had 33 rushing yards on only how many attempts did he have? Let's see here. I don't get why Sleeper does not actually do attempts here. But he had 33 rushing yards on 11 carries. 33 rushing yards on 11 carries. Buying or selling Dameon Pierce?
Am I buying Dameon Pierce, or you said
no? The same rules applied. It's still what I just said. Like buying, selling.
I will sell that Dameon Pierce production continues to stay this way. Early in the season, you go with the veteran, the guy who you trust. It's Rex Burkhead in the passing game. The one thing I was surprised about, Rex Burkhead also out-carried him 14. And then when it was late in the game, when they were up, they were running the football, it was Rex Burkhead. But he's inefficient. I don't see it continuing. One of 2 things will happen. He'll get hurt, or they'll get tired of being inefficient, and they'll give Dameon Pierce the ball. So early in the season, you're going to have to hold Dameon Pierce. Don't drop him. Rookies tend to get more run as the season goes on. We don't expect Houston to be good. So when they get out of playoff contention, there's no reason to run Rex Burkhead anymore. It's Dameon Pierce season. So I'm not too worried about Dameon Pierce's 1 bad week. Okay.
All right. Last but not least, Dallas Cowboys wide receiver CeeDee Lamb. Now with Cooper Rush as his quarterback. I'm hitting you hard today. CeeDee Lamb in this past week. Let me just double check what he had. It wasn't a very good game. I know a lot of fantasy owners were not very happy with him. I just had his stats and I lost it.
Wasn't much of anything.
Nope. Yeah. CeeDee Lamb, 29 receiving yards on 2 receptions. He had a lot of targets though, but only 2 receptions and 29 yards.
I have serious concerns about CeeDee Lamb. not just from a redraft perspective. I actually have serious concern about him from a dynasty perspective, which I think most people had him as a top 5 to top 7 dynasty receiver. I have concerns about him. I don't know if he's ever going to get to that point. I don't know what it is. He just doesn't do everything you need to do to be an elite receiver in the NFL. Doesn't catch the ball consistently enough. Doesn't get open consistently enough. Great after the catch, but he just doesn't do enough for me to be a top wide receiver in dynasty formats and redraft. I just have concerns because of the Cowboys. If you're the Dallas Cowboys and you own any of the Dallas Cowboys, the only person that you might not have concerns about is Dalton. Did I cut out?
Dalton Schultz. Yeah. So no, I pieced it together. So basically, you said the only person that you shouldn't have concerns with is Dalton Schultz on that Dallas Cowboys offense. That's what I'm getting at here.
Yeah. That includes both running backs. That includes CeeDee Lamb, Michael Gallup. Without Dak Prescott, that offense obviously changes significantly. Despite what you may think about Dak Prescott or how he played in Week 1, the Dallas Cowboys are a shell of themselves without Dak Prescott. So I do have some serious concerns about CeeDee Lamb, but again, what can you do? Can't trade him.
Yeah.
And maybe in a dynasty format, you could trade him because people still might see he has potential. But from a redraft perspective, you can't trade CeeDee Lamb. You spend a 2nd-round pick on him, maybe a 3rd-round pick on him, whatever it is. So, yeah.
But didn't you just say that you could? That you don't have to worry about what you invested in them in terms of the draft?
No, you just can't get the return of the value that you're trying to get. So
okay, all right.
For CeeDee Lamb, if you spend a 2nd-round pick on him, you're expecting what, 1,200 yards, 9 touchdowns. If you can get return and you feel like that you can get that return, then so be it. Good luck, but you're not going to get that return. When I say return on the draft pick investment, I'm talking numbers strictly, only not the actual draft capital itself.
Would you trade, and obviously this is just a position for position trade, would you trade CeeDee Lamb for Jerry Jeudy? 4 receptions, 102 yards, and a tutty?
No, I don't buy Jerry Jeudy. I don't buy that production.
Okay.
I liked Cortland Sutton better and more than game 1, and I still like him more. I think he's a better receiver than Jerry Jeudy.
CeeDee Lamb for Christian Kirk. 6 receptions, 117 yards. Didn't find the end zone for Jacksonville. I have to say that as my job as a host, I have to say what Christian Kirk did.
It's actually close for me. It's not as crazy as it sounds. It's actually really close for me. And I'm be honest, I probably would take Christian Kirk right now.
Okay.
I have serious concerns about CeeDee Lamb.
And last one, this one may be the biggest telling sign of where you're at with CeeDee Lamb. Trade CeeDee Lamb for Gabe Davis. 4 receptions, 88 yards, and a touchdown. Wide receiver.
No, the volume.
That's where I was getting at. Okay, got it. That's where I wanted to go. All right, that does it for our Week 1 reactions. Let's shift our attention to Week 2. And I know by the time people are watching this, they might have already been through their waiver wires. But A, if you haven't been, and B, to see if you actually got it right with your waiver wire additions. We're going to break down Aaron's top 5 waiver wire moves. Aaron, who comes in at number 5?
Wait, before we go there, Ken, I just want to, this is kind of a caveat. There's not a whole lot on the waiver wire this week. I just want, Week 1 usually has some big notable, we got to go get those guys. There's not a lot for me here. I don't think the injuries, where they happened, the way things happen, I don't think there's that much significance on the waiver wire. So there might be players out there that are not on this waiver wire list that I have that actually will have an impact in the coming weeks. But from a long-term perspective, there is only, I think, 2 or 3 guys on this list that I think as we talk. But so for me, it was pretty simple how I wanted to do this. My number 5 is a running back. It's Jeff Wilson of the 49ers. And the reason it's Jeff Wilson and not Tyrion Davis-Price or anything like that is because I think the first crack goes to Jeff Wilson, being that next guy up. He played in a majority of the game when Elijah Mitchell was out. Tyrion Davis-Price was a healthy scratch. They also had what's that other guy's name? The other rookie that they had active. But I think a lot of that had to do with special teams. And both of these guys play special teams, whereas Davis Price does not play special teams. So I think that's I think we've seen Jeff Wilson before. I don't think he's very dynamic. I don't think he's the best running back in that backfield, but I do think he's a good goal line threat. He's got experience. So he's my number 5. Again, I like finding running backs because running backs drop every week. So go get Jeff Wilson if you want a chance at some production. I don't know. Again, this very well could be Tyrion Davis Price's backfield. I think Jeff Wilson does get the first opportunity to make it his before they go all in on Tyrion Davis Price.
Yeah. And don't listen to Bailey. It is not Jacob Mason either. It's Jordan Mason. He is like you suggested, an undrafted rookie out of Georgia Tech.
He played. Again, those guys are special teams guys, which is why I think Price was inactive. He'll definitely be active, but you still have to worry about that whole what happened last year with Trey Sermon type stuff.
Yeah, as of right now, behind Jeff Wilson is Price and then Mason. So Jeff Wilson slotting in at the number 5 spot. He's probably been the hottest name, though, that a lot of people have been talking about, obviously, because of the fact that Mitchell going down, he now steps in as the number 1 back. So when you sent me this list, I was a little surprised at you having him at number 5, because the next man you have on this list is also a running back.
Yeah, I don't like either one of these guys, I'll be honest. I didn't pick up any one of these guys in any of my leagues. I went Davis Price over Jeff Wilson. I don't think he can last. Number 4 is Jaylen Warren, and this is more of just a speculative ad, to be honest. The reason I think I put him at number 4 is because I do think he has more long-term value than a Jeff Wilson. If Najee is out for any period of time, and I get it, everybody says it, they don't think the injury is significant, but the ankle is not an ankle injury for Najee Harris. It's really that damn foot injury that he had in the preseason that has now been re-aggravated, and it's about how much he can actually take, and when do they decide, you know what, we're going to shut him down for a few weeks to see if he can get right before we put him back in there. So Jaylen Warren, I think, is more of a speculative ad. I think we're unsure about what he gives you. We don't know much about him, but he played when Najee went out. He was the guy. So I think that he is going to be the guy if Najee misses time. And I'm more comfortable saying I'll take Najee Harris's backup, even if Najee Harris is healthy, than just take Jeff Wilson, because I've seen the Jeff Wilson experiment before.
So this almost falls under that same category of where Alexander Mattison is and Tony Pollard and those guys. I mean, not on that same level. I don't want to say
because I don't think this guy can return RB2 value if Najee's gone. I think it's more of probably a weekly flex play.
Can Jeff Wilson return RB2 value?
Sure, for a week. Jeff Wilson does not have any long-term sustainability to me.
Okay, so this ad
Trey
is
Lance
more...
and Deebo Samuel are going to be a problem. Jeff Wilson before in the past as a 49er, and he hasn't been able to he's had opportunities and he's never been able to sustain. I'm kind of over that experiment. But if you need somebody for a week, go get Jeff Wilson. He can probably win you week 2.
Yeah.
But after that, then I can be concerned each and every week. Yeah,
it's not necessarily about whether it's not necessarily like if you need to go out and get a running back, if your running backs either shit the bed or are hurt after week 1, you can go get yourself a Jeff Wilson and then. But if you had the luxury of having maybe a good set of running backs and you could invest in a Jaylen Warren, then that's kind of where you're at. Number 3 on the list, who you got?
Yeah, number 3 for me was hard because I think people were so down on him coming into the year, but I'm going to go with Robbie Anderson. I like the deep ball aspect of Robbie Anderson with Baker Mayfield. I know Baker Mayfield likes to push the ball down the field. I think Robbie Anderson fits that. I was encouraged by his usage and what he did in week 1, and give me some Robbie Anderson. Shouldn't surprise people. This is a guy who was drafted last year, as a possible wide receiver 3 flex, something like that. So
yeah, I don't think I've seen it. I don't remember, and maybe this is just stupid to say, but I don't remember a player who had such a big drop off like Robbie Anderson had. Like he was drafted last year, and not just drafted like a late pick type of guy. Like I remember Robbie Anderson being drafted as like a wide receiver 2 at some point, like during last year, and the thought and hope was there for him, and now he went completely undrafted, way down people's ranks, way down in the ADP, and now he's back. Robbie Anderson is back after a good week 2 against the Cleveland Browns, Baker Mayfield. I mean, Cleveland Browns not without, you get what I'm saying. At number 2, who you got?
This one easily could be the number 1 waiver wire pickup. It's Jamal Williams, and he should already be rostered, but some people, they don't pay attention because they love DeAndre Swift so much. I love DeAndre Swift, but I do think that this could be a very similar situation to Kareem Hunt and Nick Chubb. Both of these guys are going to be valuable all season long. You can play Jamal Williams right now as a flex. This is Aaron Jones and A.J. Dillon. This is Kareem Hunt and Nick Chubb. This is a better situation than Madison and Cook and Pollard and Zeke. I would rather have DeAndre Swift and Jamal Williams. Jamal Williams is going to play. Detroit's focal point is the run game. They have a great offensive line, and they are going to run the football. And that includes Swift and Williams. They do not care whether it's around the goal line. They'll give it to Swift and Williams all day long. Give me some Jamal Williams. I think he should be he's definitely the number 1 running back if he's out there. Arguably the number 1.
Can you repeat that?
Said if he's not on a team right now, go pick him up.
Got it. That's what I needed to hear. Last week he was very, very efficient last week. Or not efficient. He saw a lot of the field. I was trying to find his snap percentage, but I mean Jamal Williams ain't going away.
All you have to do is go look at the leaderboard of fantasy running backs, and he was up there.
Yeah, no, I see that. I see that, but I was just wondering about like what his snap percentage. Oh, I see what you're saying now. I see what you're saying. Jamal Williams,
he only played 33% of the snaps, which means, again.
But that's what you're getting here from. I mean, with the running backs that you're seeing on the waiver wire, other than Jeff Wilson, that's pretty much what you're getting. But it's just what the production that Jamal Williams brings with his 33% snap share, that's what matters.
Well, I will say this, and when you talk about total plays and 33% of the snap, and I'm not sure how many snaps Detroit had, but in 33 snaps or 33% of those snaps, he got 13 touches or looks. I'll take 13 touches or looks, not to mention multiple red zone looks with 2 touchdowns. Like that I like that. That's what you're looking for. Obviously, all these backup running backs are backups for a reason. I do see a 60-40 probably split between him and Swift. But again, when he's in the game, they give it to him. And that's what you really want to look for. It's not necessarily snap percentage, as this is different than a wide receiver. Wide receiver snap percentage, not only do you have to have the snaps, but you also got to get the targets. With Jamal Williams, when he's in the game, they're giving him the ball, and I think that matters.
Okay, fair enough. Last but not least, who comes in at number 1 on your waiver wire ads?
Yeah, might shock some people. I don't know how long he's going to hold up in the NFL this year, but it's Julio Jones, and this is a number of reasons why he's here, and I will tell you the reason. Part of that is because of Chris Godwin. And I'm sure a lot of people picked him up when Tom Brady got the call, or they called Julio to come to Tampa, and just because of the what if factor. But if he's out there, you have to go get him. I actually added him in a league, and I'm feeling pretty good about it. Again, I added him and I added him, and I got Cordero Patterson. It's a 0 running back league. I just decided to get
Jesus.
But I mean, again, when you run into a situation where you spend draft picks on Josh Allen, Stephon Diggs, Travis Kelce, and Patrick Mahomes in a 2-quarterback league. So I have those 4 as my foundation of my team. I didn't have the opportunity to draft running backs or even really great wide receivers. So I drafted Cordero Patterson and I picked up Julio Jones, and I'm feeling really good now if they can have some long-term sustainability. Although they're older players and have some injury concerns, go out and get Julio Jones, especially with Chris Godwin out. I think there's a big deal now that Godwin's going to be out maybe a little bit longer than we expected.
I think the biggest thing with Julio Jones and this Buccaneers offense is the usage was there, 3 receptions, 2 carries. Like, it just seemed like they were trying to find ways to get Julio involved in that offense in that game against the Cowboys, even when Chris Godwin was in. I think obviously Byron Leftwich likes him. I think Tom Brady likes him. And I think the biggest thing with it is that Tom Brady can, like, this isn't just some young wide receiver that has to prove himself to Tom Brady and gain that trust. Like, Julio Jones is a trustworthy wide receiver from Jump Street with Tom Brady. And I think that plays a big factor in when judging what Julio Jones can do. And we saw it in week 1 with his performance. And I do think that Julio Jones is a guy that should be rostered in 100% of the leagues because what he can bring to the table, especially with Chris Godwin out. Remember Russell Gage?
Yep.
Remember Russell Gage? That is another fall off that I feel so.
I still will say this. I still think Russell Gage will be a factor this year. They paid him too much money. Yeah, I mean, this is what we do after week 1. This is what we do. You take 1 week and we say, oh my gosh, we're so worried. Russell Gage still played 40% of the snaps, and that was with Chris Godwin starting the game. Now with Chris Godwin out, I expect Russell Gage to play more in that slot role where he's comfortable with 2 great outside receivers and Julio Jones and Mike Evans. I am not sold that Russell Gage is just gone. I think Russell Gage will be fine.
So
the hype train about Russell Gage might have.
What?
What's so funny?
You froze, and then literally you went. The hype train about Russell Gage is frozen, and then you came back straight face.
He will be fine. He will be fine. We cannot just react to 1 week of not getting some targets.
You gonna throw in a waiver claim on Russell Gage? 47% ownership.
He should be owned in a lot more leagues.
Okay. Should he be owned as much as Julio?
No.
Okay. Fair enough. That's what I want to get at. All right. Good stuff. That does it, though, for another episode of our Fantasy Drive presented by the Sack City Podcast. We'll be back again with more fantasy talk on Sunday live at 11 a.m. Eastern time right here on YouTube, giving you our starts, our sits of the week. We've got our DFS plays. We've got Aaron's rankings.
Oh,
and so
by the way, I'm interrupting you. I won the DFS, just so you know.
It's a tough week. I knew I was down once I changed James Robinson for my team. I should have
still would have lost.
Last season, I know I had some things that I remember from last year in DFS that I should be playing with my heart more than thinking too much.
That is the stupidest thing I've ever heard.
Hey, I won DFS last year. Okay.
Oh my God, you sound like Bailey, bro. Nobody cares about last year.
I'm just saying that was my strategy last year. I should have stuck with it this year, and I didn't. And now I'm down in the DFS, but it's okay. It's a long season ahead. I plan on coming back. You can check out those
in our league.
Huh?
Bailey's 0-1 in our league already. His team sucks, bro.
His team, Yep. Him and I were trying to discuss. He wanted to trade me Devonta Smith for Christian Kirk, and I was like, nah, I'm good. I'll pass on that. But if you want to hear more of our Fantasy Talk Sundays, if you want to see our picks in our DFS leagues, it's Sundays at 11 a.m. Eastern time right here on YouTube. Don't forget to follow us on all of our social media pages on Facebook, Twitter, Instagram, YouTube, and Tickety Talk at the Sack City Pod. Be sure to share, like, subscribe, tell your friends, tell your mother, your sister, your daddy. Shout out AJ. That's it. That does it for another episode of the Sack City Podcast. For our best friend Aaron Mukes, I am me. We will see you tomorrow.
Yeah, I'm ready.
Peace out.
We know we were a much better team than we came up representing